Galatians, we're in chapter 2 and verse 4 says this: some false believers had infiltrated our ranks to spy on the freedom that we have in Christ Jesus and to make us slaves. The thing that jumps out to me most here is this first line, this false believers. There's a group within the group. There's a group of people within the believers who have infiltrated that group that aren't really believers at all. The thing that makes them false believers in Paul's mind is what they've added to the gospel. Remember, Paul's gone to great lengths in chapter 1 to say that the gospel is Christ plus nothing. That's the gospel. That's our hope. That's our peace. This group has come along and said, Christ is great. We like him, but let's add circumcision. Just a little surgery. Just a little off the top. Just a little obedience to the law. Paul says, that's no gospel. That's the reverse of the gospel. That's the good news plus works. That's grace plus works. And that is not the gospel. That's no gospel at all. That's what everybody teaches. Have faith in God and do good. Well, how much good? Paul says the real gospel is at peace, at rest, not in what you could do, but in what God has done on our behalf through Christ. That's the gospel. And so this group, he calls them false believers. He says that the motives of this group is to put us back into bondage. He calls it to make us slaves. They're looking in on the freedom we have in Christ, and they want to make us slaves. And you say, well, what does that mean? Like, make us slaves? I think it could be a couple areas. Spiritually speaking, we could be slaves by adding something to the spiritual order of things in our life. You say, well, what do you mean? Like Christ plus, I don't know, baptism, Christ plus speaking in tongues, Christ plus missions, Christ plus good works, Christ plus communion, Christ plus church, whatever it is. You could add something in, and then the next question becomes, how much? Are you doing it right? How many times have you done it? Have you done it sincerely? It's like, oh my gosh. It's no freedom. It's a new bondage. It's a new chain. If you're still confused, you're like, I don't know. Well, it doesn't really make sense to me. I don't worry about that too much. What about psychological bondage? The way we process our own mental state and emotions. He says, think about this. There are some who are telling themselves it's Christ plus their personal health, Christ plus financial security, Christ plus happy kids, Christ plus healthy relationships, Christ plus a spouse, whatever. If you're sitting there adding anything to Christ or putting anything at his level, Paul's saying this is going to lead to bondage, because humans and human beings and circumstantial situations in this broken world will constantly let you down. Or it could be cultural bondage. Maybe you're interpreting your faith through the lens of your culture. You expect everyone to talk the same, act the same, think the same when it comes to things like, oh, I don't know, appearance, like cultural things like alcohol or hairstyles or punctuality or whatever it is. You know that those are different in a lot of cultures. Anytime you start saying, well, Christians do this, and the this is just a cultural thing, you've really added something to the gospel, and now it's bondage. So let's do our best as a church, as a faith community, to hold to the authentic message of grace. Let's hold on to the simplicity of what it means to trust in Christ and him alone and nothing else and no one else. Because those, when raised to the God level, good things, raised to God things, they will destroy the beauty of the gospel. That's what Paul's saying. That's why they're false believers. I pray that you are a real believer, that you are in tune and filled with a raw sense of faith in what Christ has done for you. I pray that's your faith this week. All right, as far as we can go for today, I'll see you Sunday morning when we continue in this series of Galatians. I promise you, it's going to get heavy.